Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As somebody who's worked over 8 years in multiple corporate industries such as finance, tech, and the video game industry, I've personally observed the middle class habits that keep people stuck in place, that keep them from advancing forward and ultimately making more money. And so in this video, I want to talk through 7 habits that keep people stuck in the middle class and how to avoid them. Habit number 1 today that keeps people stuck might be familiar to you if you're a bit shy or have a fear of rejection, and that is that you are not earning what you're worth. I've seen this habit so many times because a lot of my coworkers, and even myself included, were afraid to ask for raises. And oftentimes you'll start a job at a certain salary, say it's $50,000 a year, and we're taught that if we stick with it long enough that a promotion and a pay increase will probably come our way after about 1 or 2 years. And a pretty common occurrence is that you actually get the recognition you deserve, so you actually get a pay increase. But then when you look at how much your pay increase actually is, you're surprised to see it's only 3 to 5% year over year. That means on a $50,000 salary, it's now perhaps $52,000 per year, which is great objectively, but that's barely keeping up with inflation. Now, the real dilemma comes in when you realize that your skills have advanced so far disproportionately from your pay. So perhaps you're taking on more responsibility. Maybe you're doing the work of perhaps 2 employees rather than just 1, or just beyond your normal job description. You should probably be paid more. You might even look up comparable salaries at different companies and realize that you're being underpaid to the market. Now, the habit that holds most people back in this case is simply being too afraid to ask for more money. Not asking for what you're worth is a habit that holds way too many people stuck in the middle class and stuck in this endless cycle, because the employers know this and they love to basically not give you a raise, because that means they can continue to pay you the same amount that you've been earning this whole time. And unfortunately, how capitalism works is that if you're a business owner and you have an employee that costs you $4,000 a month, you need a positive return out of them. You can't pay $4,000 a month for an employee and then have them cost you $5,000, because then you would have an unprofitable business. In most cases, employees will generate way more corresponding revenue compared to what they're actually paid. So this infographic on the screen right here is from 2023, but you can see that the tech company's revenue per employee here is quite crazy. At the very top, we see Apple, who makes a whopping $1.9 million in revenue for every employee that they have. Now, do you think that every employee is being paid $1.9 million per year? It's probably not the case. Every employee is worth $1.9 million in revenue to the business. And if you work at Apple, I feel like the difference between them giving you a $5,000 versus a $15,000 raise year over year is honestly pretty negligible to them. So at any company you work at, you should definitely be shameless about asking for raises, especially if you deserve it, because not doing so only hurts you in the long run. So on that note, let me be shameless as well and ask you to subscribe to this channel, because it only takes a few seconds and it's actually one of the habits that I've personally implemented this year, to subscribe to more channels. It's free and it's fun. All right, so habit number 2 that keeps you stuck is not exercising delayed gratification. To explain this habit, I need to tell you about the famous Stanford psychology experiment called the marshmallow test. In this test, which took place in the 1970s, children were offered a choice between 1 marshmallow immediately or wait 15 minutes to get 2 marshmallows instead. This would be explained to the children, and then the experimenter would leave the room and come back in 15 minutes to see what the kids chose. Many of the children immediately ate the treat, wanting instant gratification, but the ones with the highest amount of self-control were able to resist their temptations and earn themselves 2 treats later on. And according to the results of the study, those that were able to delay gratification had several advantages later on in life. They would perform better academically later in life, had much higher SAT scores, as well as fewer behavioral problems. The late CEO of YouTube, who was really quite successful, Susan Wojcicki, was also famously in this study, and her mom even recounts that, quote, she showed greater self-restraint than any other pupil. This perhaps would signal her success in business to come later on in life. The lesson here is that oftentimes those people that can exercise the most patience in life when it comes to seeking results are likely going to be the most successful. And far too often, the people that want instant gratification, they're going to be the ones that spend more than they earn. They're going to forego investing in retirement, and they might even prematurely hop jobs. And this type of habit might also manifest itself in, let's say, impulse spending. So a lot of my former coworkers would get a bonus every Christmas, and instead of saving some of it, they would go blow the entire bonus check on, let's say, a designer bag, because they felt like they deserved every penny of that bonus. But the thing is that I actually noticed a year later on, that same cycle would actually repeat. That same person would get a bonus and they would just get a new bag with their complete bonus check. And so this is a habit that we want to avoid. If we know something is bad for us, why would we continue to do the same thing all the time? Because that's just going to lead us to be in the same spot financially. So in order to avoid these situations, I would say try to make your decisions surrounding where you want to be in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or maybe even 5 years. That means my coworker who bought that bag and spent their whole bonus on it, they might be one step closer to financial freedom if they were able to save and invest some of that money instead. Habit number 3, keeping people stuck, is solely relying on one income. According to the IRS, the average millionaire has several income streams, and if we don't have more than one source of income, that can actually be quite a risky thing. That's because if you only have one source of income via your primary job, if you lose that job, you need to fall back on an emergency fund, and if you can't find another job before that fund runs out, then you get in a whole bunch of trouble. That's why I think the best thing to do when you have a job already is to think of ways that you can add multiple sources of income to your life, not only to help you make more money, but in the event a disaster occurs, like you lose your primary job. I'll put up on the screen a few different types of income streams you can consider adding, and if you're able to at least diversify your income streams a little bit, not only will you feel, I think, safer at the end of the day, but you'll also have something to fall back on in case you lose your job or a recession hits. And the benefit of having more income in general is that you get to add more money to, let's say, your retirement fund and also your savings, and that flexibility that comes from that is going to be quite liberating as well. Habit number 4 today, keeping you stuck, is simply not being aware of your own finances. So I know that this seems like kind of a no-brainer, but once you understand how much you are spending on average per month, you can then take your income and figure out a plan on how to allocate your money. That's going to be pretty insightful for your finances, and I personally find it fun. So I think I find tracking expenses fun, but it's not always fun knowing how much I'm spending on, let's say, sushi or Diet Cokes this month, which can be quite a lot. Now, if you're able to establish this habit of being aware of your finances, this will help you spend a little bit less and making sure you earn more than you spend at all times. As your income increases throughout your life, it's easy to have your expenses naturally creep upwards. But by even being aware or even tracking your spending, you'll know exactly when your spending is getting a little bit out of control, and then you can rein it back in. So here's a really great exercise if you want to give this a try. So number 1, you want to find somewhere to track your expenses. So you either write it down on a notepad at the end of every day, perhaps you put it in your notes app in your phone, or you can just use a free tracking app. Number 2, whenever you spend money, just write it down. I personally have found that writing it down right after I spend that amount is the easiest thing for me. So perhaps I buy a coffee or a dinner and I'll just go right into my spending tracker app and log it right there. And then finally, number 3, at the end of every month on the 30th or the 31st, I sum up all of those expenses and I log it into a spreadsheet. Now, the method in which you do this doesn't matter so much, but the main point that you're looking for is a place to record your progress. It's kind of like journaling in a sense. Like after you analyze your expenses and you are able to see how much you're usually spending, you can then improve yourself on a weekly or monthly basis because you now have your baseline. If you're interested in my free expense tracking template, I will leave a link down below for that so that you can download it for free if you're interested. I find that this practice alone will transform anyone that is stuck to a financial superhuman that is good with their money, and if you're able to invest that difference accordingly, you can break free from the middle class. Habit number 5, keeping people stuck, is the use of debt to maintain a lifestyle that they've become accustomed to. Credit card debt is literally at record levels these days, $1.142 trillion to be exact as of Q2 2024, with 47% of credit card holders carrying a balance from month to month at an average APR of 21.51%. And I shouldn't have to tell you that if you have a habit of carrying a balance on your credit card, it becomes increasingly difficult to grow your net worth and also just make progress on your financial goals. And the one situation you want to avoid when it comes to credit cards is running up a balance so high that your interest payments actually don't really make that much of a dent on your principal balance that you owe. So if you find yourself trying to keep up appearances or impress others and you have to go into debt to do so, this is something that can definitely keep you stuck in place when it comes to progressing your life. I'm all for spending money on things that you enjoy, and if you are buying that new piece of clothing or say a leather good for your own joy, then yes, I am all for that if it's within reason. But if you're doing it just to keep up appearances, I would think twice about that and really try to curb that habit. Habit number 6 is misusing alcohol, so drinking too much. This is a little bit of a controversial one because drinking doesn't just affect the middle class, but it is something that you don't want to get into the habit of doing regularly because of the law of inertia. That law states that an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. Now, I like to think of our lives in motion, and if you're constantly progressing yourself and improving yourself and trying to make more money, I think that misusing alcohol can actually be the external force that stops your momentum. Pretend Pretend you go to a happy hour every Wednesday night and you drink a little bit too much. You wake up the next day, it's Thursday, and you're a little bit hungover. You're feeling sluggish and you just aren't as productive at work the next day because you spend most of the day trying to just recover. If you're an entrepreneur, it's even worse because you're on your own hours, and so you really need to be productive at all times. But because of the drinking, you waste one full work day. Now that's not really the biggest deal if it was just a one-off. We all have to have a little bit of fun sometimes, sure, but pretend you did this every single week for the entire year. That would be 20% of your work days affected, so 50-ish days out of the year that you're not operating at your best. Imagine how much you could accomplish in 50 days of productive work. And for those of you out there that say, well, I only drink on Fridays or Saturdays, therefore it doesn't affect my work during the week. Well, think of all the negative effects that could linger past just the day that you are hungover. You could have a lack of sleep later on, you could have lack of concentration, brain fog, liver problems, obesity, diabetes, the list goes on. I don't want to tell anyone how to live their life, and I'm all for people having drinks in moderation, but if you're drinking to the point of excess where it's affecting your progress in life and work, you might want to think twice. That, and it's also just a really expensive habit to go out and drink every single week, and so I think it could also be a habit that keeps you stuck in place financially. Habit number 7 today is not investing or saving for retirement. The average 401k balance in America at the age of 65 plus is $272,588 according to the most recent Vanguard report that was released this year. And in addition, this article on the Wall Street Journal just came out, which reads 6% of your paycheck is becoming the new standard, and workers are putting a record share of their income towards retirement. And that's pretty crazy because 6% contributed to retirement is now known as a record share of their income towards retirement, but the stats clearly show that you are likely pretty screwed. I mean, if you're the age of 65 and all you have is $272,000 something in your 401k, that's not going to be enough money to retire comfortably. If you want to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, you're actually going to need a balance of at least $1.25 million to do so using the 4% withdrawal rate rule. That means the person that is 65 plus, according to the statistics, is $1 million shy of retirement. If you are currently aged 20 to 35 or maybe even 40, you need to start early and try to aim for a 10 to 15% savings rate at the minimum. If you're older than that, you may need to save even more just to catch up. But let me show you guys how realistic and approachable this actually is. So even let's say you make a modest sum of money, pretend you make $50,000 a year from the ages of 25 to 65. Every single year you clock in, you make 50K and you never get a raise, but you're able to save 10%. That will still get you a balance of $1.398 million by the time you're 65, which will actually give you a comfortable retirement. In terms of where to put your money, as long as you're investing a portion of your paycheck into index funds that track the market, you're at least on the right track. I have tons of videos on how to invest on this channel, such as my full beginner's guide to investing, which I will link right here for you guys. Make sure to check out that video and let me know which habits that you need to avoid in the comments, and I will see you guys in a future video. All right, thanks for being here. Peace.